Seasoned broadcaster and author Iman Rappetti is back with her latest offering. It's entitled Sermons of Soul. Now, the book is a compilation of opening segments from her award-winning radio show Power Talk, which captures people's untold stories. Iman Rappetti joins us on the line to chat further about some of the stories before the hard news of the day overtakes us all. Iman, a very good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. I mean, you literally start off the book by saying, keep your spirit light. It's heavy out there. How have you managed to do this during COVID-19, during these unprecedented times?
I think it's an experiment in fortitude, really. Every single day you wake up, you're not quite sure how you're feeling, so you do kind of like an internal check. And I must say, Liezle, I mean, this is such a novelty for me because I'm wearing a full face of makeup and I've got my sweatpants on. Viva!
You've got the perfect business attire, Iman. Thank you for joining us here. But ultimately, you're here to chat about your latest book, which is called Sermons of the Soul. In terms of what inspired you, you know, the process and the journey of compiling this book, even the style and tone that you've approached it with, I mean, what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, I always think that our lives are a poem to our circumstances, and sometimes those are negative, sometimes those are positive, sometimes they're inspiring, sometimes they're reflective and thoughtful. And these writings were essentially a love letter to my listeners on Power 987 on the show I had, Power Talk, over a 5-year period. And each day when I got into the radio, you know, there were different things that would inspire me on the way to work, seeing a sight at a traffic light or having read a newspaper headline or heard something out of the radio. Really just feeling inspired to connect with my audience, and that's where these love letters emanated from.
I was listening to your talk with Aldrin, and, you know, you guys were chatting about how there were over 500 intros that you had to sift through. I mean, what was that sifting process like for you? Does it mean that there's a part 2 coming? I mean, what is that? What's going to happen on that front?
I don't know. I mean, you know, so I was... First of all, I mean, I count myself so blessed. I mean, I just tweeted a picture this morning of I think I was 9 or 13, I can't remember how old I was, and myself now, and how I could not have imagined this arc that my life has taken and this journey my life has taken. And in compiling those sermons, it felt like there was a weaving between my own experience and who I was in the past and who I was becoming, and the experiences that I, you know, connected with in our country at any given time, whether it was political or wondering about how we're going to deal with corruption or how we would get more people employed. So many different themes form the tapestry. And so it was a very difficult job to do, to select the right sermons that would make it into the book. But I hope that my publisher, myself, and my editor, and the illustrator, Shabnam Khan, I think we did a pretty good job.
Yes, I mean, it's one thing to touch people intellectually, but to evoke emotion is something that you can't control. And I must say, I haven't managed to read the whole book, but it definitely evokes and stirs my soul, Iman. So I want to look at what you hope to achieve through this and evoke through this body of work. I mean, what is your call to action through this book?
I mean, I think it would be too ambitious for me to ask that people be changed or to expect that people be changed in the reading of my book, because we connect with pieces of literature and people's points of views at different points in our own journey. But I hope that it does especially inspire people who might be feeling like the perspective they have is the singular perspective on their lives, and that's all they'll ever know. That just around the corner from that moment, or just outside the window of your own experience, there might be something beautiful to behold. And so there's everything to hope for, everything to pray for, everything to continue to exist for. And that's what I would love for us all to tap into, that collective energy that says that there's something around the corner, but what it requires is for us to activate our own agency, to take control of our lives, and to be an active participant in the reality that we're creating in our country.
And so much so, I've also taken that exact quote from the book, which is clearly we're in sync. It says, you say, we do not need a savior. We need to amplify our agency so we can save ourselves. Just referring to page 153, where you also say that life's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, during these unprecedented times and this, you know, the challenges that COVID-19 has brought about as we experience a new normal, I mean, what are the biggest lessons that you've taken from here on to what can we expect from you going forward?
this notion that everything can be neatly packaged in our lives and we can apportion to our future a particular expectation, that has been completely deconstructed, smashed and destroyed, if you will, in the context of something that we could never have prepared for, like a global pandemic, where everything has begun to shut down. People are losing their jobs. So much is changing, both externally and internally. And I really, for myself, I've done a lot of reconstructive work on my own anxieties, my own fears, my own projection of how I would be in the world. And so part of me is allowing my canvas to be painted upon as each day unfolds. But the other part is tapping into the value system that forms the scaffolding of my life, that forms the pillar and the foundation of my life, is to still be good, have integrity, love as much as you can, don't be engulfed by fear, pursue the freedom always. And so I think those themes are enduring. It's just the context in which they exist and we practice them that changes.
Iman, I can't let you go without, just touching on the rather sensitive, sad, somber time we find ourselves in as a country. I mean, you interacted quite a lot with the late Bob Mabena. In fact, your show came directly after his. Just looking at, the life and times and his legacy at large. I mean, what do you take away from his life? What stands out the most? How will you remember him as a colleague, as a friend, and as an inspiration?
There's an old saying, Liezle, that nature hates a vacuum. And when Bob left so unexpectedly, and you looked at the volume of people that spoke into what his life represented to them, it is in the volume it's in the vacuum that the truth of someone's impact is told and known. And so, you don't think that you're working with a legend. You just think you're working with another decent human being, or a great person, a great guy, somebody who's talented. But only when they leave and you see all of these tributes coming in and you realize the impact that they had, do you know how big their star was? Do you know how important an impact they made on different people's lives? But for me, I mean, Bob called me in about April saying, that the country was feeling, for him, just felt like in a really depressed state, and would I write something and would I say something? And he allowed me on his show with him and Faith the next morning, and I shared something and he said, thank you so much. He was always so kind to me and so affirming of the gifts that I had, and I think that we all need people like that. And to his family, Eucharist, and the children, and to everyone, my heart really goes out to you. Losing someone so vital, we never expected would just go so suddenly, and I hope that his soul will always rest in power.
Iman, thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. We're going to have to leave the conversation there, but seasoned broadcaster and also Iman Rappetti, she's back. She was just chatting about her latest offering entitled Sermons of Soul, and also just rehashing the life and times of her late friend and colleague Bob Mabena. Of course, her book is out in stores nationwide.